Embracing your body feels good.
And it's good for you.
This is a podcast for parents to help you help your kids.
To embrace their bodies so they can be who they are in a world that tells them otherwise.
This is the Embrace Your Body podcast with Taran B.
And Dr. Z.
We acknowledge that we are recording this podcast on the traditional country of the Kaurna people, and we pay respect to elders past, present and emerging.
So, Taran, I've got a confession to make.
Oh,
Are you ready?
Oh, yes, because I actually don't even know. What is it?
Well, I hit the self-compassion pretty hard last night. I just had to practice what we're going to talk about today because making this podcast is actually really hard for me. And I'm excited about it because we can share all this information with parents out there, but I do struggle with perfectionism. And so trying to make something that is real and being okay with it not being perfect is a little tough. Because I'm wearing the shirt. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and self-compassion is actually my main strategy that I go to here to fight the waves of like, oh, why didn't I say it better? Or like, why did I yell at the kids? Or, all of the things that come up in life more generally, but then also specific to body image.
So what did you do? So how did you hit that self-compassion hard last night?
I just had to run through this process of these 3 steps that we're going to talk through today. Make sure that I was practicing what I preach, really.
For sure. And I hear you. I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm actually really hard on myself. And so many times after I finish a project, or TV interviews are a really good one, I can't tell you how hard I berate myself for things I said, didn't say, a silly laugh, or I don't know. It's just all the things I could have done better. And it's taken a lot of time to quieten that voice, or as I say, tame that voice, because it was pretty wild. And I'm not sure that it will ever go away, but I have taken some power away from it by showing up for myself with self-compassion. So we've gone from showing up with more compassion, which we'll go more into in a minute, but I thought it might be a good reminder for all the listeners to remember that it wasn't too uncommon to grow up with the mentality of don't love yourself too much. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, don't be up yourself.
Don't be up yourself. And I mean, we do have a bit of that in Australia with the tall poppy syndrome and that idea of cutting people down. But I think it's really interesting that you said to quieten the voice, because that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's really turning down that critical voice when it pops up unhelpfully, and turning up the voice of that more compassionate side that's treating yourself with kindness, really.
Yeah, and it's not just treating ourselves with kindness, but when we do, it allows us to treat others with kindness. And I remember an example, and I wrote about this in the book, and I think there's been a big shift in this narrative over a number of years. But I wrote about the example of the 80s supermodel Linda Evangelista, who said, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. And I remember growing up looking at that going, God, what a bitch. And now it would be very different. It'd be like, yeah, you go, girl, you know your worth. Yeah. But it took self-love, self-compassion and kindness to thyself to be able to practice that for others.
Yeah.
And I guess in so many people I talk to, the interesting thing about this self-compassion piece is that people think that being critical to themselves is actually what's going to motivate them to try harder, or do better or achieve more, but it actually has the opposite effect.
Yeah. It's such a misconception that, you do need to keep pushing yourself by being hard on yourself. And I think it's a very 80s and 90s thing that we grew up with. That was kind of the vibe. But now we just know that it doesn't work. And we've got so much evidence to show that it doesn't work to do it that way.
Oh, and it's such a nicer way. I mean, I've tried both. I've tried to get to outcomes via the hard road and mean girl road, and then the other, which is much more flowy, much more freeing, it's just kinder and more lovely. Because I think the mean girl feels like wading through thick mud. You might get there, but you get there and you're a bit dirty, it's a bit hard and you're quite exhausted. And I think, I'm wearing a self-compassion club T-shirt today. I think the more of us who can join that club, we just experience that flow and we feel more grounded and connected to joy and happiness. And I think the thing about this whole self-compassion and kindness self is that there's the whole hashtag love yourself, which we've talked about a lot actually in this podcast, like the hashtags that kind of derail the really important conversations and the substance and depth of the conversations. But let's not get lost behind the hashtag love yourself. Can we go deeper on the science, which you are perfect to talk to us about?
Yeah, I love this bit because I get to bring in all of the evidence and all of the research, because there has been so much now, really over the past sort of 10, 15 years, that just shows very conclusively that adults and adolescents with high levels of self-compassion have lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, other mental health issues, improved happiness, but also better physical health and immunity. So some of the things that we don't expect to be aligned with hashtag, be kind. And they're also more likely to engage in physical activity, to sleep better, to have better engagement in health behaviours. So we're seeing that this is really something that goes quite a lot deeper than just being kind to yourself.
It's undeniable. It's science. It's a legit thing. I love that.
Researchers often don't say it's definitely undeniable.
Hang on. It's a legit thing.
Yeah, it's a legit thing.
Can I say that?
I'll approve that. But then also there have been some self-compassion interventions now, and what we show is that teaching people to use this approach and teaching people to practice self-compassion, respond to themselves with self-compassion, can reduce stress, anxiety, depression, eating disorder symptoms, improves body image, even if you're not talking about your body in some of the activities that you're doing. Just self-compassion generally towards yourself, treating yourself with this kindness, turning down that critical voice, improves body image and reduces eating disorders.
Yeah, incredible. So it's really a no-brainer for us as parents to learn to harness that voice, turn up the self-compassion, and I guess for our kids, if we can learn to do that for us, then we can model that to our kids, and we can teach them. And there are so many resources that we talked about this on the Embrace Hub, so the embracehub.com, a suite of free resources. It is free resources. Please please go there. We created it for all of you who are listening. And there are also whole chapters in this book. So Zali, self-compassion, what does that actually look like? Can you break it down for us?
A lot of the self-compassion stuff that, some of the big names, Kristin Neff and Paul Gilbert talk through, it's about dealing with distress and these sort of hard moments and challenging times. I think also, though, it is about the smaller moments and it's about reframing a lot of the little things that happen throughout our day and that conversation with ourselves. And I call this responding, like self-compassionate responding. Let's give an example with a challenging body image situation. So say you're on social media and, you're scrolling through and your brain automatically compares your body to the body of someone that you see. That's a, attractive, younger influencer, for example. And so our brains automatically compare us to the images that we see. And we can't control the fact that our brains do this, but we can control what we do about it in terms of where we let ourselves go in the conversation we have with ourselves after that. And so often, we see the image, we start to beat ourselves up about it, we give ourselves a hard time, we're sitting on the couch in our PJs, like eating whatever, and like looking at this person's like highlight reel of their best moments on their glamorous holiday or something. But self-compassionate responding looks a little bit more like, the 3 steps are, first of all, stop and feel the feeling. So it's just kind of without judging yourself, like you don't have to be like, don't have any negative thoughts. It's just like without judgment, actually kind of going a little bit deeper and questioning yourself, why am I feeling this way? What is it about this that's making me feel that? But also just recognizing like, oh, this is hard. Like it's a bit of a hard moment. So feeling the feeling, naming your feeling, like I feel really envious when I see someone who looks like that or that gets to do those things or gets to be on that island. I'm feeling really upset with my body right now. Just verbalizing it or writing it down or just saying it in your head. Step 2 is to realize that you're not the first person to have felt this way.
Because I hate people on islands as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we just universally hate people who are on islands and showing us their pictures? Done.
So many of the things that we find challenging, other people find challenging as well. But it's the feeling that you're the only one and that there's something wrong with you that makes it worse. So Kristin Neff calls it common humanity. But just thinking, who else has felt like this? Who else has yelled at their kids in the morning? Like lots of people, right? And then step 3 is the kindness part. So this is about, saying something nice to yourself, doing something nice for yourself, but also using some supportive touch. So this is like putting your hand on your heart or, giving yourself a little massage behind the back of your neck. Some of those things actually activate the soothing pathways in our brain that kind of really reinforces all of the things that you're saying in your head. And as I'm talking through all of this, I'm thinking like, people are just thinking I'm having these full-on conversations with myself inside my head, which I do often.
But here's the thing.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah. Right?
And sometimes we find it hard to think of the kind things to say to ourselves. So the good reframe there is just like, if this was your friend, what would you say to your friend? Because often we would just support them with so many like, oh, of course, like you're just trying your best and like, haven't you just had 3 kids and,
I felt this way too.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. And so if we could have that person with us all the time, then, we'd be fine.
And we do though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So when you talk about people are going to think that I'm something, whatever they want to make up about you because you're talking to yourself in your head all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, me too. Yeah. But it's this the mean girl and the kind girl. And it sometimes is a battle between the two of them. And that's, I guess, what we talk about when we're like, quieten down that mean girl voice.
Yeah.
But I think that advice around what would you say to your best friend, it has become a little cliche-y. Like it's something we just throw out there, but really stop and think about that. I mentioned this in another podcast that we recorded, is that the most important relationship that you'll have with anyone is the one that you have with yourself. But we just don't really invest a lot of time and thought and energy into it. We just go into the battle mode of when something's said inside your head and it's easy to go down a very slippery slope very quickly with that negative self-talk.
Yeah, and so I think what this compassionate responding does is it really helps you to spiral back up instead of spiraling down. And this is based on Kristin Neff's sort of 3 components of self-compassion, and we talk through this in the book at length to really step everyone through and give lots of examples, because I think that hearing the examples really does help you to contextualise this and put this into practice. But we've also got a traffic light kind of concept that's a printable that's in the Embrace Hub as well from our colleague Vaya Sikas, who's done some work in this area. And so printing that out and sort of having it on the fridge, really stepping through those 3 steps yourself can then help you to be able to model it to your kids.
And having that framework, that's what I loved about that traffic light system, is that it's a process that then you can apply to the 50,000 different things that can happen with kids across their body image or their behaviour or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I found that really helpful in my home, just to spend a little bit of time to get it and then start applying it.
Yeah.
And now I have to think less about it.
Yes.
As in like, what do I have to do first here now in this situation?
Yeah. So the traffic light helps you just to get that. Like you go from stop is red and then you think orange, like everyone else feels this way too. And then it's like green, where you go to kind of kindness sayings or your supportive touch stuff. And I think that does help to just get the hang of it initially, but then you can start to practice that anytime you start beating yourself up. So if you make a mistake at work or if, you've yelled at the kids after asking them to put their shoes on 17,000 times and they, you just move through that process yourself in your head and then you can start to really teach it by just pointing it out to them.
So I guess to simplify all the things that we've just said, it comes back to modelling self-compassion and we can start by practicing that with ourselves and then we can show our kids that we're doing it and they can see that and we model this way of responding.
And this is just about really making it obvious. You don't get out your PowerPoint slides and your pointer or whatever, but you just, say something happens, you're baking a cake in the kitchen or something and you drop the eggs and instead of being like, I'm such an idiot, you would just start to say out loud some of the 3 steps you've been practicing. So that's things like, you know what, this is a really hard moment for me. I'm attempting a very complex cake recipe and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I'm tired, so I drop the eggs. And then you just keep going and just talk it aloud and say, like, that's probably pretty normal. I'm sure I'm not the first one to drop something or get overwhelmed in the middle of a recipe. And then you talk through the kindness point, which is I'm just going to stop, take a breath, and you show them, I'm just going to stop and breathe and take a moment to calm my brain down and then try again. And so by showing them that, it's so much more effective than being like, so here's, guys, what you need to do. Then sometimes they switch off as soon as you put your teacher voice on, but just showing them this is how mummy responds to these things.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off then. It's just it's a thing that I've tried to do with my parenting that has always failed. Like when I see the moment for a teachable moment, I'm like, right, here we go. I'm coming at you with this, and it never works. But it just happens in that every day.
Yeah.
And you automatically, for those who can't see this podcast, you put your hand on your heart then. And I actually did that the other day when I was feeling some overwhelm about getting on a stage and presenting, and I hadn't done it for a while, and I was like, it's okay, I've got you. And I put my hand there, and I don't know what the science was, but I just knew that just that simple act
feels good.
Made it better. It does. Yeah. It does feel good.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing to talk through is that our natural default sometimes is to want to fix. There's a problem. We just want to fix it for our kids. We want to make it all go away. We don't want them to feel pain. But by doing this, and doing it in a way that allows them to make the mistakes and being cool with it, is that we're giving them the tools to develop the inner passion, self-compassion for themselves and develop that voice for themselves. So we can't just keep fixing everything for them. We need to allow them to experience it.
Yeah, and we show them what to do with those feelings so that they're not just always pushing them away, like I think we did for 20 years in the 80s and 90s. You know, you're just pushing those feelings away. You're dealing with them without judgment and knowing how to come back from that.
I actually just want to mention that I wrote about this in the book about when I separated from my husband after being married and together for like 19 years. The biggest thing for me was to break my kid's heart. I felt so gutted by the fact that I was going to do that. And someone saw the trauma in me and trying to get my head around doing that. And they gave me the heads up that it's not my job in life to protect them from all the feelings, the bad feelings, that they have to go through that. And then I reflected back to my childhood and my teens and my 20s, and I thought about all those big moments where I collected those stories and felt, crap. Yeah. And that's, we know that in the depths of our despair is where we do all the learning. I'm going to talk to someone about that one day. Like, I'm going to be like, could we do this differently? Like, whoever she is, I'll just say, excuse me. But yeah, we naturally just want to protect.
Yeah.
But sometimes we can overprotect, and we just need to let them fall and hurt and feel.
Yeah, but give them the tools to get back up. And so this is one of those things, like learning to respond in that way, it will become more automatic over time. We can model it. Hopefully they'll start getting taught this at school. And hopefully it'll just become part of the way that things work more broadly in society as well, sort of become the default rather than being something new and not normal. But I think also one of the other things I wanted to mention is that there is this responding in the moment stuff, but then there's also the practicing that you can do as well. And some people find it easier to start with the in the moment responding, and some people find it easier to start with practicing self-compassion in meditations or writing tasks. And basically, most of those talk you through that sort of 3-step process so that you can practice it in a calm moment instead of in the crisis moment. So there's lots of free meditations on all of your different meditation apps, and you just search for self-compassion and you can get those things. We've also recorded a few specifically for the Embrace Hub, which are really nice, some for young people and some for us parents.
Beautiful. Well, I'm convinced, and I hope that everyone who's listening is convinced to join the Self-Compassion Club.
You can get the T-shirt.
Well, you can't actually. No, it's not on sale. But you can make one.
Yes. Make your own T-shirt. For more information, get your hands on our book, Embrace Kids, and for free resources, visit theembracehub.com.